When the last tree is cut, the last fish is caught, and the last river is polluted, when to breathe the air is sickening, you will realize too late that wealth is not in the bank account and that you can't eat money. Alienist. Today, individuals and big corporations do not care about what happens to the environment. All that matters to them is to get the gold by any means possible. In the process, so many farms are destroyed, so many rivers are polluted beyond recovery, and also the air we breathe has become so intoxicated that so many people bear the consequences and even lose their lives as a result of airborne diseases such as tuberculosis and many others. Sadly, something that was supposed to be a blessing is now becoming a nightmare, destroying livelihood and costing governments huge sums of money in an attempt to recover the wrong and fight illegalities. This is so evil, and we need to address it. Welcome to African Dream Motivation, and my name is Bernard. Let's now get into it. The history of African gold rights began way beyond the age of discovery in the 15th century. Before Portuguese Henry the Navigator began his exploration of Africa, kingdoms were already trading gold, making huge fortunes from them. According to the metmuseum.org, the 5th century saw the Berber-speaking people crossing the Sahara Desert with camels. This opened up the trans-Saharan gold fields, and from the 7th century moving forward, trans-Saharan trade was linked to the Mediterranean economies that demanded gold but had sought to supply to the sub-Saharan economies where gold was abundant. The search for gold in those early days led to the collapse of the old Ghana Empire and the rising of a lot of gold markets where riches were made. The Moroccan scholar Leo Africanus, who visited the Songhai in 1510 and 1513, observed that the governor of Timbuktu owned many articles of gold, and the coin of Timbuktu was made of gold without any stamp or superscription. Africa came on the list of powerful nations of the world after the 15th century. The rich land of Africa became so attractive that in the 17th century, the Netherlands began exploring and colonizing Africa. Present-day Ghana became the hub of sub-Saharan gold trade, which attracted the name Gold Coast. The Portuguese and Netherlands were active in the 15th century, trading in the Gold Coast, but soon they were joined by more powerful countries and world superpowers as well as companies. In 1626, the French established the Company of Occident, which was able to expel the Dutch from the Senegambia, now Senegal. This marked the first French domain in Africa. The purpose of this company was to exploit the resources of the French colonies. Sweden came into the scene in the 1650s, establishing the Swedish Gold Coast in modern Ghana. Many countries such as Spain, Great Britain gradually established their dominance in Africa. During the 17th and 18th century, even though many of these countries were interested in gold, they were however focused on the slave trade until the 19th century, when their aggressiveness was really felt. In 1886, the world's largest gold fields were discovered in Witwatersrand, South Africa. This time, the South African gold production went from zero in 1886 to 23% of total world output in 1896. The gold attracted so many settlements, and this led to the founding of Johannesburg, which is an important history of South Africa. Many of such discoveries were made in other countries in Africa, and after this period, the goal was to colonize as many countries as possible and make it even easier to exploit the natural resources available. All these discoveries were made and advancements in extraction were introduced. Many Africans became gold miners who depended on it to survive. This continued on a very large scale after the European had left. Countries like Ghana, South Africa, Mali, and many others became top producers of gold in the continent of Africa. This growth in production proved that Africa had huge reserves of gold that could last for many centuries. Africa began getting new visitors who came with more advanced mining equipment. This made a scary story even scarier. Even though the presence of Chinese miners can be traced way back to the early 1900s, the impact on matters relating to Africa has become much greater in the 21st century. For instance, in 2016, China's ambassador to Zambia announced that the total value of Chinese investment in the country had grown to over $5.2 billion. These investments were mostly in the mining sector. Even though such action sometimes helps to strengthen and grow the mining industry, it has also created room for something even darker. The environmental impact of these Chinese investments have come under great scrutiny, especially in the mining sector. Some non-governmental organizations have criticized the Chinese mining companies for serious pollution of the air, water and land, damaging wildlife habitats, and displacing local communities without adequate compensation. This has been the case of many African countries, especially from the early 1950s to date. Even though China wasn't active in the colonization of Africa and couldn't make much impact then, they have really stepped up their game. By 2015, the foreign direct investment of China has surpassed any country in the world. According to the Foreign Policy Research Institute, financing of Chinese contracted projects in Africa has also been increasing and peaked in 2015 at $55 billion, almost 20 times of the level of foreign direct investment. Similarly, by 2016, China was the largest exporter to Africa, accounting to 17.5% of Africa's imports. By mid-2017, more than 10,000 Chinese-owned companies were operating in Africa. All of these financial aids and loan facilities paved way for Chinese dominance in many African economies. How Chinese miners took over small-scale mining. Small-scale mining has been a source of livelihood for millions of people across the continent of Africa. Traditionally, pickaxe, shovel, pan, and other basic tools were used by small-scale miners, but things were about to change. According to China Focus, an estimated 1 to 2 million Chinese migrants have moved to Africa. Most of these migrants targeted the small-scale mining industry, something which was reserved for the ordinary citizen to make a living. The coming of these Chinese miners brought about advanced mechanization, which relates to the intensification of small-scale mining. New technologies and machineries were introduced, which replaced the traditional tools and methods. Since small-scale mining back in the days were not visibly affecting the environment, many governments ignored the activities and they were free to operate. This became a loophole for the Chinese to exploit. They introduced the use of excavators, wash plants, and crushing machineries, as well as water platforms and equipment for dredging in rivers. These miners also brought in considerably huge capital, and this played a major role in expanding the operations even further. This was next level mining, speeding up the search for gold. The gap between illegal mining and small-scale mining was gradually trimming down, making them highly synonymous. When we talk about small-scale mining, it is usually on a small piece of land using less advanced equipment. But with the increase in foreign nationals, especially the Chinese, such mining activities are now becoming a large-scale operation, consuming most arable lands of Africa. Today, what should have taken 5 years could take just months to achieve due to the high mechanization of small-scale mining. Most of these activities began in the rural areas of Africa, where the government couldn't properly monitor the operations. Local miners and residents of mining areas tend to sell their lands at a very cheap price for the exploitation of gold. The norm of mining firms acquiring huge acres of land became uncontrollably and increasingly high. To many, this was their way of cashing out big, and they were right. For instance, according to World Economic Forum, most cocoa farmers in Ghana make $1 a day, while those in Cote d'Ivoire make around $0.78 a day, both significantly below the extreme poverty line. When one is making so little, it is quite tempting to sell off their whole farm for something significantly bigger. This has made it easier for illegal miners to lay their hands on huge acres of land. As the saying goes, there is no smoke without fire, and for these illegal activities to be established, they ought to have some power backing them. This is because a foreigner who knows nothing about the geographical navigation of a country will find it impossible to locate remote areas where illegal mining could be sustained. Just like how leaders of African communities sold their own people into slavery during the transatlantic slave trade, Chinese miners who journey to Africa mostly receive political backing from local leaders and sometimes from huge political and national leaders. With such power backing them, most of these companies are unregistered, unregulated, and are not afraid to practice any illegalities. With this kind of power, there are no limits to the extent they can go to extract their gold. This has led to so many negative impacts on livelihood. Illegal mining in Africa has been a thorn in the flesh of the continent for quite a very long time. This is really affecting the livelihood of people. Let's look at how. Loss of revenue through smuggling. Illegal mining of gold has led to an illegal market growing out of proportion, causing huge trade irregularities. A Reuters analysis exposed that much gold leaving Africa pay no taxes to the state in which they are produced. They are simply smuggled out and sold off. According to the Reuters again, customs data shows that the United Arab Emirates imported $15.1 billion worth of gold from Africa in 2012, more than any other country. But Africa's records documented just a few. These black market trades mostly come from small-scale miners and illegal miners, purposely to cut corners and make money without paying taxes. Food insecurity. The activities of illegal miners has speedily become a threat to agriculture. Today, Africa is losing millions of farms to mining, which is affecting food production. Importations are on the rise, which in the long run creates a deficit balance of trade and galloping inflation. This disturbingly makes the cost of food exceedingly high. Destruction of surface and underground water. This has been one of the most visible challenges Africa is facing. Ever since huge mining equipment became the bedrock of small-scale mining, water pollution has been on the rise. Some of these contaminations include acid mine drainage, which mostly occurs when a large quantity of rock containing sulfuric minerals react with water and oxygen to create sulfuric acid. The acid is then washed into nearby streams, rivers, lakes, and other underground water. There have been many instances where other heavy metals such as arsenic, cobalt, copper, and many others are washed into river bodies, killing aquatic life and making the water from these sources unusable. In other instances too, surface and underground water are polluted as a result of sediments and mud from these mining sites. What makes it extra evil and heartbreaking is the act of mining in water bodies disregarding its importance to the survival of man. Such mining activities have led to the destruction of water bodies, making water supply in most parts of Africa a big challenge. Air pollution and its health implications. Whether large scale, medium scale, small, legal or illegal, chemicals used in mining are very dangerous. Therefore, improper exposure to these chemicals goes a long way to affect the health of miners, which mostly are respiratory related. This, however, makes the activities of illegal mining a great concern. Most of the time, the people investing in these activities are not even closer to the mining sites, leaving the poor and the desperate men and women to risk their lives and make the big man at the top richer. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, miners are at risk of developing a lung disease called pneumoconiosis because of their exposure to airborne respiratory dust. This type of dust includes extra fine particles that people can inhale into their lung tissue. Miners can also have an increased risk of dying from lung cancer. What makes it even riskier is that most of these mining sites are in the rural communities, putting a wide range of people at risk. These and many negative effects of illegal mining have forced the hand of many governments across Africa to impose strict regulations to control some of these negativities. For something illegal to be operated in broad daylight with little or no concealment, it must have great power behind it. Gradually, many African countries including Ghana, South Africa, DR Congo, Nigeria are beginning to pay attention to how these illegal activities are threatening the livelihood of people living near mining sites and millions of others who rely on rivers and arable lands for survival. This is what has forced the hands of many governments to tackle the issue more drastically. Laws and regulations have been made to deter foreigners and locals from engaging in illegal mining, which is causing serious environmental hazard. These regulations weren't enough to put an end to the widespread illegal mining. It was a step in the right direction, just that the direction had a couple of exceptions which undermined the ideal purpose of the regulations. Firstly, small-scale mining has been the source of livelihood for many people from time immemorial. The only difference between small-scale mining and illegal mining is when, where, and how the mining is performed. Therefore, an abrupt desist means that many miners will become jobless and add to the millions of unemployed citizens. Because of this, a lot of people are willing to fight till the death with authorities to still get the gold. We cannot pinpoint Africa's problem and forget about corruption. Many authorities are willing to take bribe and even protect the illegal miners from any attacks. In these African countries, the fight against illegal mining of gold has become a political manipulative agenda. It can be likened to carrying water with a basket, knowing that there is no way it can hold the water. In early 2016, the government of Ghana even went to the extent of engaging the military in apprehending illegal miners and also burning excavators. But this has still not been able to bring an end to the illegal mining. Africa's problem is that, at the end of the day, the big man at the top who has been trusted to lead the war against illegal mining is the very person ensuring the protection of illegal miners who offer bribes. Many water bodies have been polluted with harmful chemicals, and some have been muddied, making it impossible for domestic and industrial use. The advanced mechanization of small-scale mining has led to the destruction of good arable lands, which could have been used for so many years cultivating and harvesting crops. Simply put, the activities of illegal mining have destroyed many livelihoods, and it is still occurring, causing more damage. The same way I began, I would like to end with a quote from Alinas. When the last tree is cut, the last fish is caught, and the last river is polluted, when to breathe the air is sickening, you will realize too late that wealth is not in the bank account and that you can't eat money. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. This has been Bernard and you've been watching African Dream Motivation. Kindly subscribe for more.